Hello, welcome back to All of the Street Fighters, where unfortunately we're playing all of the Street Fighters. And I say unfortunately because this week we're looking at what is probably the worst version of Street Fighter you can play. Unfortunately, this is Street Fighter 2 for the Master System, which most people probably haven't played or even heard of it, probably don't know it exists, because this was only released in Brazil. So the Master System received a lot of these weird ports in Brazil, mainly because the system stayed popular long after it died out in other countries. The Master System stayed very, very popular in Brazil. Brazil wasn't receiving releases of new consoles like we were in the rest of the world, mainly down to their import taxes, is what I understand. For example, the PlayStation 2 is still massively popular in Brazil. You can't buy the Nintendo Switch, people have to import it on the grey market, they call it. Anyway, that's by the by. The Master System remained very, very popular, and this company, Tec Toy, were developing games exclusively for the Master System, exclusively in Brazil. And one of the things that they've become famous for is porting games that would come out on later consoles in other parts of the world, and they'd port them to the Master System. So Street Fighter has become a bit of like a Tec Toy cult classic, and it costs a lot if you want to buy this on eBay now. I mean, you're talking hundreds of pounds. But it's awful. It's completely terrible. So I don't know where to start with this. It's not a port of any particular version of Street Fighter. They've taken this kind of halfway look between Champion Edition and Super Street Fighter 2, the new challenges. So it's got some of the art from Super Street Fighter 2, namely the character portraits are taken directly from Super Street Fighter 2, just with a lot less colours because the Master System couldn't display many colours at once. But it doesn't have the character roster. It doesn't feature any of the 4 new challengers, so it doesn't have T-Hawk, Cammy, Fei Long, or DJ. They're absent. It's missing 4 other characters. So it's basically the roster from Champion Edition. So that's including your boss characters, Sagat and M. Bison and that. But it's weirdly missing 4 characters. It's missing E Honda, Zangief, Dalsim, and Vega. So they're just completely absent from the game. So you've got this roster of 8, like the original Street Fighter 2, but it's not the original roster. It's got some of the later ones. So that's the first weird thing about it. The main weird thing about it is that it just controls really strangely. It doesn't feel like any other Street Fighter. It feels really erratic. Your jump is just... I don't know how to describe it. It's really quick, and you don't jump where you expect to jump. Obviously, the Master System controller only has 2 buttons. It's only got buttons, what are they, 1 and 2, or are they A and B? I can't remember. 1 and 2, I think. And so you've got 1 punch, you've got 1 kick. That's fine. I mean, there's a version of Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition on the TurboGrafx, the PC Engine, that's only uses 2 buttons, and that kind of controls fine. But yeah, this is awful. And then every character has only got 2 moves. So Ryu and Ken, for example, they've got their Hadouken and they've got their Hurricane Kick, whatever the real name for that is. But neither of them have the Dragon Punch, which is ridiculous because it's so important to those characters. So yeah, every character has got 2 moves basically. So pretty much every character has had a move, at least 1 move taken away from them. And then those special moves are really difficult to pull off. I mean, I've just recorded 20 minutes of video of this game, and my thumb is absolutely killing me. I'm almost definitely going to have a blister up on it. It's just difficult to pull them off. You can't consistently do it. I have to just keep repeating the move over and over and over again, and then occasionally he'll just bust out one of the moves. It's much easier and much safer just to use your basic attacks, so your punches and your kicks. And luckily the AI is terrible, so that's a very usable tactic. So the damage that you take from moves, to me, it seems completely random. Sometimes you'll attack your opponent, or your opponent will attack you, and just no damage will be done. And then other times, it'll just do tons of damage. It seems completely random. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if there's just something weird with the programming of how the damage is recorded. It seems random. During my M. Bison fights, the last fight in the game, it just seemed like my block stopped working. So he'd do his Psycho Crusher, I would block it. I mean, you'll see this in the footage. I will block it and it would just still take half my health bar off, which is completely pointless blocking it. And it would also follow me around the screen. So normally in Street Fighter, M. Bison Psycho Crusher is the move where he kind of barrels across the screen, glowing blue from energy. In Street Fighter 2 for the Master System, he would barrel towards me, I'd jump over him, and as I jumped over him, he would turn around in midair and follow me back the other way, which is stupid because that means it's impossible to block. And also Ryu's fireballs started to do that in the last round as well, which they hadn't done at any other point in the game, so that's weird. What else? It's full of weirdness. Ryu's fireball will sometimes do like a double fireball, but one of them will be invisible. So you'll jump over one, and then you'll get hit by something else that's flown behind it. It seems. So that's strange as well. I mean, I haven't really talked about the visuals yet, and I guess the reason for that is because you can't really criticise it. It's the Master System. It's an 8-bit console. What they've done with the sprites of the characters, in a still image, they actually look quite impressive. I think they've done a fairly good job at kind of making them lower fidelity with less colours, but still keeping the look correct. Obviously, the animation's terrible, and that's mainly noticeable in win animations. So like when Chun-Li does her like jumping for excitement, winning animation, it kind of just looks like she's hovering. And I noticed when Guile does his end animation as well, and he brushes his hair up, his hair will go like up as he brushes it, and then it wouldn't come back down. So he's just left with this kind of tall mohawk haircut, which definitely shouldn't happen. It doesn't happen in the others. But overall, I think they've done a fairly respectable job at reducing the graphics to work on a Master System. It's just when they've added movement to those sprites, it just all goes to pot. I mean, it doesn't control how it should. It's just bizarre. There's an interview on YouTube that you can find if you search for it, where the president of Tec Toy, the company who designed this port, talks about how they got approval from Capcom for this. And they said that Capcom originally didn't want them to release it for the Master System, and that's because they just didn't want Street Fighter 2, their new exciting franchise, releasing on an old console, presumably because they knew that the sacrifices that would have to be made. So they just flat out said, no, you're not releasing it. So eventually Tec Toy also made Genesis ports, Mega Drive ports. They got a Capcom representative to travel to Brazil to demo their port of Street Fighter 2, and they hid the Master System under the table, and they handed them 2 Genesis joysticks to play it on, and the Capcom representative quite rightly said, this needs a lot of improvement. And then they claim at that point they revealed the Master System console, and that wowed the Capcom representative because he'd never seen anyone get this amount of power out of the Master System, and he instantly approved them releasing the game in Brazil. So that's the story that the Tec Toy president gives, which that's plausible. I think that could quite rightly be true. And it is. I guess they have got a lot of power out of the Master System. I'm sure no other developer, probably apart from Sega, knew the hardware like Tec Toy did. They released so many games for so many years, but that doesn't make the product good. It's awful. So yeah, I mean, it's easily my least favourite port of Street Fighter 2. It's virtually, I won't say unplayable. The word unplayable is bandied around a lot these days, but it's not unplayable. It's just not fun to play. There's a lot of weird ports of Street Fighter, namely on handheld consoles. So there's like Game Boy Advance versions and Game Boy Color versions. But in my experience, those are all quite playable and all quite good. The Master System port, it clearly only exists because there was a country in the world where the Master System was pretty much the only home console that people played, and people were crying out for arcade ports for it. It wouldn't have been released anywhere else. Like, in a world where the Super Nintendo and the Mega Drive were available, you wouldn't make this game. It's terrible. It wouldn't pass quality control. So there we have it. The Master System with a weird entry in the Street Fighter franchise. I don't recommend you play it. You're probably unlikely to play it unless you hunt down the ROM. And I feel like if you've got the desire to hunt down the ROM to try it, then fair enough, you should play it just to experience how weird it is. But yeah, it's not one of the recommended ones. You know, if you thought Street Fighter the movie, the game was bad, well, you haven't seen anything yet. Well, hopefully next week we're going to move on to brighter pastures. We're looking at the second iteration of Street Fighter 3 next week, and that's great because Street Fighter 3 is absolutely brilliant. So we're going to wash the nasty taste out of our mouth with a brilliant version of a brilliant Street Fighter. So I'm looking forward to that, and I hope you'll join me for it. Thanks for watching. If you've never watched one of these videos before, I'm looking at every Street Fighter game from in chronological order, or almost every Street Fighter game. We're missing out some of the slightly more like iterative versions that don't really have many changes, but we're generally looking at every Street Fighter game that's been released, and we're up to 1997. So we've got a long way to go yet, but check out some of the rest of the playlist. And if you enjoy it, drop a sub, and these will drop into your feed every Thursday. So whether you're new or a regular viewer, thank you for watching, and I will hopefully see you next time. Alright, bye.